night Nancy Guthrie was taken from her home, something happened at the house next door. The security cameras went dark. Not all of them. Just the ones facing Nancy's property. The cameras on the other side of the house kept recording, and the neighbor's dog, an animal that sleeps through the night every single night, woke up, wanted to go outside, and stood there, staring in the direction of Nancy's home. Today, 34 days later, the FBI is going door to door in the Catalina foothills, asking every neighbor the same question. Did your internet go out that night? This matters because if those cameras went dark because someone deployed a signal jammer, this is no longer a question of whether this crime was premeditated. A signal jammer is a federally illegal device. You do not stumble upon one. You acquire it with a specific purpose. You bring it to a specific location. You turn it on at a specific time. If someone carried a signal jammer to the Catalina foothills on the night of January 31st, they came prepared to blind the neighborhood. And they came prepared to take Nancy Guthrie while no one was watching. But here's the contradiction that has every expert we've consulted divided. If the person who took Nancy was sophisticated enough to jam the neighbor's cameras, how did they get caught on Nancy's own doorbell camera? The footage the FBI released is clean. Not glitchy, not fragmented, clean. How does that happen if a jammer was running? That contradiction is the heart of this investigation. And it tells us something important about whoever did this. Something that may ultimately be the key to finding them. Verified facts only. Every detail in this investigation comes from official FBI statements, Pima County Sheriff's Department communications, verified expert analysis, and the neighbors' own accounts, as reported to NBC News and Fox News Digital. We do not name individuals who have not been charged. Everyone discussed here is presumed innocent unless convicted in a court of law. We separate confirmed facts from expert analysis, and we tell you clearly when we're crossing that line. By the end of this video, you will understand exactly how signal jammers work, what the FBI found when they canvassed that neighborhood this week, why the experts disagree about whether a jammer was used, and what this new lead means for the search for Nancy Guthrie. Together, we're going to walk through every piece of this. Let's go. Before we get into the technical evidence, I want to take a moment and talk to you directly. This community continues to blow me away. People from across this country, and honestly from around the world, tuning in because you refuse to let Nancy Guthrie become a forgotten story. You refuse to move on. And that matters more than you know. So here's my ask. If you're watching right now, drop a comment with your city and the time you're watching this. I'm serious about this. It's not just a greeting. It genuinely helps me know where you are and when you're online so I can time these investigations to actually reach you when you're there. If you're in Tucson at midnight or Melbourne at sunrise, I want to know. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now is the time. This case is moving fast. This signal jammer development is breaking right now. And I don't want you to miss what comes next. Hit subscribe, tap the bell, and share this video with someone who's been following this case. Every share puts more eyes on Nancy. Every share makes it harder for whoever did this to disappear. All right, let's get into the evidence. Let's start with what we know, verified through multiple news reports this week. A couple living adjacent to Nancy's property told NBC News that they have 4 security cameras on their home. On the night of January 31st into February 1st, the night Nancy disappeared, the 2 cameras on the side of their house closest to Nancy's property showed not available. That status had never appeared before. The cameras on the opposite side of their house continued to function normally. The neighbor described the timing as uncanny. And they're right to use that word. Because the window in which those cameras went down aligns with the window in which Nancy vanished. But the cameras were not the only thing that responded that night. The couple's dog, which they say sleeps through the night without fail, woke them up. The dog was agitated, wanted to go outside, and once outside, was staring in the direction of Nancy's home. The neighbors have told investigators about this. They do not know what caused the dog's behavior, but the timing is difficult to dismiss as coincidence. On Thursday, March 6th, day 34 of this investigation, FBI agents and Pima County Sheriff's investigators returned to the Catalina Foothills neighborhood. This time, they were not asking general questions about suspicious activity or requesting surveillance footage. They had a specific question. Did your internet go out on the night of February 1st? According to multiple neighbors who spoke with NBC News and Fox News Digital, several residents confirmed that their internet connections experienced glitches that night. Some didn't notice at the time because they were asleep. Others said they wouldn't have been home to observe it. But the fact that the FBI is asking this specific question 34 days into the case tells us something. They are taking the possibility of a technological disruption seriously. This is not casual follow-up. This is a new investigative thread. An NBC News reporter directly asked Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos whether investigators believe the suspect may have had a Wi-Fi jammer. Nanos declined to answer directly, but said investigators are looking at every angle of the surveillance video. The Pima County Sheriff's Department told Fox News Digital that they cannot comment on a potential internet outage in the neighborhood. This brings us back to the FBI doorbell footage, the only clear images we have of the suspect. When those images were released, observers almost immediately noticed what appears to be an antenna-like object protruding from the suspect's pocket. The image is not high resolution enough to identify the device definitively, but it has generated two competing theories. Theory 1. It is a signal jammer, small enough to fit in a pocket, designed to disable wireless cameras and alarms in the immediate area. Devices matching this description are commercially available for as little as $30 to $50, despite being federally illegal. Theory 2. It is a handheld radio, a walkie-talkie. If the suspect was using a radio rather than a phone, that would suggest real-time coordination with at least one other person while deliberately avoiding cell phone networks that the FBI can trace. This is operationally aware behavior. Both theories point in the same direction. Planning. Whether the device jams signals or transmits them, it was brought to that property with intent. So we know the cameras went dark. We know the FBI is asking about it. We know there's a device in the suspect's pocket that could explain it. But here's the question that divides every expert we've consulted. Was a jammer actually used? Because the evidence says two things at once, and only one of them can be true. Let me explain this in plain terms, because understanding the technology is essential to understanding this case. A Wi-Fi signal jammer works by flooding the radio frequency that your wireless devices use to talk to your router. Think of it like this. Your Ring camera is trying to have a quiet conversation with your router, sending video data back and forth. A jammer walks into that conversation and starts screaming. The camera is still on, it's still recording, but it can't get its message through. The video never reaches the cloud. On your app, the camera shows not available. There is another type of device called a deauthentication tool. This is even simpler. Instead of drowning out the signal with noise, it sends a fake command to the camera that says, disconnect from the network. The camera obeys because it thinks the instruction came from the router. It goes offline. It can be as small as a smartwatch and cost less than $10. Both types of devices are illegal in the United States under federal law. The FCC prohibits the operation, marketing, sale, or importation of any signal jamming device. There are no exceptions. Not for homes, not for businesses, not for vehicles. The penalties include substantial fines, seizure of equipment, and criminal prosecution, including imprisonment. But illegality has not stopped them from being used. In 2024, a group of Colombian nationals was arrested in the United States for running a burglary ring that specifically used Wi-Fi jammers to disable Ring cameras before entering homes. In Colorado, the Highlands Ranch neighborhood experienced a series of jammer-assisted burglaries. Multiple states, Indiana, California, New York, have since passed or proposed laws specifically targeting jammer use. The FCC itself has issued formal statements acknowledging the growing threat. Here is the detail that the competitor's video completely missed, and it is arguably the most important piece of this puzzle. Commercial signal jammers have a limited effective range. According to Morgan Wright, CEO and founder of the National Center for Open and Unsolved Cases, a typical jammer works within about 10 to 30 yards and is most effective when positioned close to the victim's Wi-Fi router. Military and law enforcement jammers can reach further, but they are physically larger and require significantly more power. The neighbor whose cameras went down does not live immediately next door. There is desert between the properties. The houses in the Catalina foothills are spread apart with significant distance between them. If a commercial jammer was deployed at Nancy's home, could it realistically have disrupted cameras at a neighboring property? Wright says no. His assessment is direct. If the neighbors experienced an internet outage, it was not caused by an RF jammer at Nancy's home. A device powerful enough to reach across that distance would be military-grade equipment, not a $50 device purchased online. So how do we reconcile that with the fact that the cameras did go down? This is the contradiction at the center of this story, and it is the detail that has split the expert community. Nancy's home had a Nest doorbell camera. She did not have an active cloud subscription, which means the camera was not continuously uploading footage to Google's servers. And yet, the FBI and Google were able to recover images from that camera, images clear enough for the FBI director to release publicly. Those images show the suspect's face covering, backpack, gloves, and holstered weapon with no visual distortion. If a Wi-Fi jammer was running at Nancy's front door, those images should not exist. As Wright put it, if a jammer had been up and running persistently, you would not have gotten the clear pictures that they did from the front. Retired Police Sergeant Betsy Brantner Smith agreed, noting that even police car laptops glitch during traffic stops near someone with a jammer. Yet this footage shows none of that. Brantner Smith offered an alternative, reading. She believes the antenna-like object in the suspect's pocket is more likely a handheld radio than a jammer. Her reasoning using a radio instead of a cell phone is operationally smarter, because the suspect would know that the FBI's cellular analysis survey team can trace phone signals. A radio leaves no such trail. And if the suspect was coordinating with someone else via radio, that means there were at least 2 people involved in Nancy's abduction. Based on the evidence and expert analysis available as of today, there are 3 scenarios that investigators may be weighing. Scenario 1. A signal jammer was used, but not at Nancy's front door. It may have been deployed elsewhere, along the suspect's approach or exit route, to disable cameras that might have captured their vehicle or direction of travel. The jammer would have been off, or not yet activated when the suspect reached Nancy's porch, which is why the Nest camera captured clear footage. It may have been turned on afterward. Scenario 2. No jammer was used. The neighbor's camera outage was coincidental or caused by an unrelated internet service issue. The antenna in the suspect's pocket was a radio for communicating with an accomplice. The significance of the outage is being amplified by a public desperate for a break in the case. Scenario 3. Multiple devices were used. A jammer for the broader neighborhood, a radio for coordination. The suspect, Guthrie, approached the porch before the jammer was activated, was captured on camera, and then the jammer was deployed to cover the actual removal of Nancy from the home and the departure from the area. This would require at least 2 people operating with a plan. We do not know which scenario is correct. The FBI has not confirmed or denied any of them. But each one points to the same conclusion. This was not random. This was not impulsive. Somebody came to Nancy Guthrie's home with equipment, with a plan, and with the intent to take her while the neighborhood slept. Whether it was a jammer or a radio, every expert agrees on one thing. This was premeditated. And that leads to a theory that has been gaining traction among investigators, one that is genuinely unsettling for the people who live on that street. What if the person who took Nancy didn't have to drive far to get home? Before I go any further with this section, I want to be absolutely clear about something. We are not accusing any individual. We are not pointing at any neighbor. We are not encouraging anyone watching this to investigate, surveil, or confront anyone. One Tucson resident, a school teacher, a father of 3, has already been publicly targeted by online sleuths who decided he was the suspect based on nothing but a vague physical resemblance. That man spoke to investigators. He was home with his family the night Nancy disappeared, and his life has been upended by people with keyboards and no evidence. Speculation without evidence destroys innocent people. We will not participate in that. What we will do is examine why investigators and experienced law enforcement analysts are considering the possibility that the suspect may be local, and what that means for the investigation. The argument for a local suspect comes down to 2 factors: access and invisibility. The Catalina foothills is not a neighborhood you stumble into. The houses are spread apart. The roads are quiet. The residents are primarily older and retired, which means they are home during the day, and they notice things. Multiple neighbors have told reporters that they know which vehicles belong and which don't. A stranger parking on the side of the road or an unfamiliar car idling in a cul-de-sac would stand out immediately and likely be reported. During the day, entering this neighborhood undetected would be extremely difficult. At night, it becomes more viable, but you still need to know where you're going. Know which house is Nancy's. Know that she lives alone. Know her routines. Know when she comes home from dinner at her daughter's. That level of detail suggests either extended surveillance or casual familiarity. Extended surveillance would require repeated visits to the neighborhood, visits that alert residents would likely notice. Casual familiarity means you already belong. There is also the cell phone problem. Digital forensic experts have explained that one of the primary tools investigators use in cases like this is geofencing, identifying every cell phone that was in a specific area during a specific time window, and then looking for devices that don't belong. If the suspect lives in the neighborhood, their phone would not stand out. It would be exactly where it's supposed to be. Even if they turned it off during the crime, the absence of a signal from a known resident's phone in the middle of the night might not raise flags the way a completely unfamiliar device would. Some investigators and analysts, including retired Pima County Sheriff's Office veteran Eric Maldonado, who worked burglaries in this exact neighborhood for decades, believe the most likely explanation is a burglary that escalated into a violent confrontation. The logic works like this. Nancy was retired and home nearly all the time. The only viable window for entry without encountering her was at night, while she was sleeping. If the intruder was detected, if Nancy woke up, if there was a confrontation, priorities would shift instantly. The items they came to steal would become irrelevant. The priority would become avoiding identification. Nancy, as someone who had seen their face or come into physical contact with them, would become the primary evidence and the primary liability. This framework explains why nothing appears to have been stolen from the home, why blood was found near the front entrance, and why Nancy was removed from the property. Under this theory, the ransom letters that followed were either opportunistic fakes or a desperate attempt by the actual perpetrator to redirect the investigation toward a kidnapping narrative. This is one theory. It is not our theory. It is not confirmed. It comes from an experienced law enforcement professional, and we present it here for what it is: one possible framework among several. The competing theory that this was a premeditated targeted abduction driven by Nancy's connection to Savannah also remains credible and is supported by the $6 million ransom demand, the media-directed delivery of ransom notes, and the level of preparation suggested by the masked approach with a weapon. 34 days. 15,000 tips. The FBI back in the neighborhood with new questions. And now this. The cameras went dark, the internet glitched, and the FBI wants to know why. After everything that has happened in this case, this may be the first genuinely new lead. So where does the investigation actually stand? Let me give you the honest picture of where this investigation is as of today, March 6th, 2026. No suspect has been publicly identified. No arrest has been made. No proof of life has been received by the family or law enforcement. The primary physical evidence lead, gloves found 2 miles from the home, traced via DNA to a restaurant employee with no connection to the case. 2 ransom deadlines passed with no further contact. At least one person was arrested for sending a fraudulent copycat ransom note. The FBI has shifted its primary command post from Tucson to Phoenix, but says the investigation is fully active. Sheriff Nanos told NBC News this week that investigators are definitely closer to tracking down a suspect or suspects. The combined reward from the FBI and the Guthrie family stands at $1.1 million. And now there is this, the internet outage line of inquiry. FBI agents are back in the neighborhood asking specifically about digital disruptions. This is new. This is targeted. And if it leads to the identification of a jamming device or a traceable purchase, it could be the forensic break this case is needed. Here's something that has been underreported. Signal jammers are illegal in the United States, but they are still commercially available through online channels. If investigators can determine that a jammer was used, they have a potentially traceable chain. Who purchased it? Where it was shipped? What credit card or cryptocurrency was used? What IP address placed the order? In other cases, including a 2022 investigation in Seattle, investigators traced the online purchase of illegal equipment directly to a suspect, leading to an arrest. Similarly, if a jammer was active in the neighborhood that night, there may be digital footprints in the form of router logs. Routers don't typically detect the presence of a jammer directly, but they may record the sudden simultaneous disconnection of multiple devices, a pattern that would be unusual under normal circumstances. If multiple homes in the neighborhood show the same pattern at the same time, that becomes powerful circumstantial evidence. I want to take a moment for the people on the other side of this investigation, the ones we never see on camera. Think about what it means to process 15,000 tips. Each one has to be evaluated, categorized, and either followed up on or set aside with a notation explaining why. 6% of tips in high-profile cases yield actionable results. That means roughly 14,000 of those tips led nowhere. But they still had to be read, assessed, and documented by a human being with a full caseload. Think about the FBI agents who walked through the Catalina foothills on Thursday, day 34, knocking on doors they may have knocked on 4 weeks ago, asking new questions, watching for reactions. Think about the forensic analysts who spent weeks following the glove DNA only to trace it to an unrelated person. The investigators who reviewed every frame of doorbell footage, every second of traffic camera data, every Ring camera clip from every neighbor within a 2-mile radius. These are people who know that Nancy Guthrie has been without her daily medication for more than a month. They know what that means for an 84-year-old woman with a pacemaker. They carry that knowledge into every interview, every door knock, every late-night tip review. The weight of an unsolved case is not abstract. It is personal. And for the officers working this one, it has been personal for 34 days. On March 5th, Savannah Guthrie walked into the Today Show studio for the first time since her mother disappeared. What she told her colleagues was the kind of thing you say when you're holding on with everything you have. On Thursday morning, Savannah Guthrie returned to Studio 1A at Rockefeller Center. She was not there to go on air. She was there to see the people she works with, the colleagues who have been covering her mother's disappearance every single morning since it happened, while simultaneously managing their own grief for a friend and teammate. She thanked the staff and crew for their support and for, in her words, caring about my mom as much as I do. Then she said something that her colleague Carson Daly later described as the most perfect words he could imagine, spoken without notes, from the heart. I wanted you to know that I'm still standing, and I still have hope, and I'm still me. And I don't know what version of me that will be, but it will be. I'm holding on to my faith. I still believe. And as my mom would say, where else would I go? She told them she plans to come back. I have every intention of coming back, she said. I don't know how to come back, but I don't know how not to. You're my family, and I would like to try. Meteorologist Dylan Dreyer led the team in a prayer for Nancy and for the family. Several colleagues were in tears. Co-anchor Jenna Bush Hager told viewers, even though it feels like the hardest thing to do, it's also her home, and where she feels so loved. 34 days. No answers. An 84-year-old mother who requires daily medication has not been seen or heard from, and her daughter, one of the most visible people in American television, is standing in the studio where she built her career, telling the people she trusts most that she doesn't know what version of herself will come back. But she's going to try. That is what this case has cost one family, and it is a cost that continues to compound every single day that Nancy is not found. Here is where things stand. The cameras went dark. The FBI wants to know why. Multiple neighbors confirmed internet glitches on the night Nancy disappeared. Investigators are examining whether a signal jammer, a deauthentication device, or some other form of electronic disruption was deployed in the Catalina foothills that night. If they can identify a device and trace its purchase, that could be the forensic break this case has needed for 34 days. The experts are divided on whether a jammer was actually used. The clear footage from Nancy's own doorbell camera complicates the theory. But the selective nature of the neighbor's camera failure, only the cameras facing Nancy's property, is difficult to explain as coincidence, and the device in the suspect's pocket has not been identified. Nancy is still missing. If you have information, anything at all, here is how to reach the people who can act on it. The FBI tip line, 1-800-CALL-FBI. You can submit tips online at tips.fbi.gov. The Pima County Sheriff's Department has a dedicated tip form for this case. And investigators are specifically requesting surveillance footage from anyone within a 2-mile radius of Nancy's home, covering January 1st through February 2nd, 2026. You can be anonymous if you work in technology, cybersecurity, or digital forensics, and you have expertise on signal jamming that could be useful to this investigation. Contact the FBI directly. The more eyes and minds on this problem, the better. Let me leave you with this image. One camera went dark. The cameras on the other side of the house kept recording. The dog woke up and stared toward Nancy's home. And by morning, Nancy was gone. Whatever happened that night, the technology was part of the story. The question is whether it can also be part of the solution. Investigators are working on that answer right now, and we will be here when they find it. If this investigation mattered to you, share it right now. One share could reach the person who has the missing piece. Subscribe if you haven't already and hit that notification bell. This case is developing by the day. Drop your city and the time you're watching in the comments. Let's keep the light on for Nancy. Honor victims. Expose evil. I'll see you in the next one.